Hi, this is Dr. Stephanie Wautier, and I'm the host of Conversations with a Chiropractor. I believe healing often begins with connection, and that's really what this podcast is about. These are real conversations about health, healing, life, and the stories that shape us. Some guests come from the wellness world, some come from the community, and some simply bring a life experience worth sharing. My hope is that each conversation invites you to listen, learn, reflect, and maybe see your own life or healing in a new way. Sit back, grab a cup of coffee, and enjoy this conversation with a chiropractor. Today on Conversations with a Chiropractor, I'm so excited to be joined by Craig Meriwether. Craig is a subconscious transformation specialist. He is a clinical hypnotherapist, and I'm so excited to talk to him today. Craig, thanks for being a guest.
Hey, Stephanie, it's really good to meet you and talk with you. I've been looking forward to this. I know we were talking a little bit before you press the record button, and I think I'm your first hypnotherapist, so it's going to be a fun conversation.
Yes, you are. The first thing that I want to ask is, what was the journey like to becoming a hypnotherapist? Did you have a personal experience with it?
Yeah, well, it all comes down to my own hurt and pain I was dealing with. I struggled a lot with depression, anxiety, and in my teenage years and in my 20s, and I graduated high school in 1985, so there's no internet, there's no uh, SSRI drugs, no Prozac or anything like that. It's just whatever talk therapist you might find in the yellow pages back in the phone book era, or whatever book you might find at the library or the bookstore. But,
Yeah.
a teenager, 14, 15, 16 years old probably aren't going to do either of those things. It's just something I struggled with and lived with and just assumed of that's the way life is. It was kind of the resurgence of the personal development movement with Tony Robbins in the 90s and Oprah
Mm-hmm.
and that, well, maybe life could get better. And maybe there's these techniques and tools I could use to start, the process of just being happier and being better Craig Meriwether.
Yeah.
And also at that time, of course, the internet starts coming out in the late 90s and the SSRI drugs start coming out. So the actual conversation opened up about depression. You can actually talk about it. And there's forums and discussion groups online, and Oprah is talking about it. And these articles are coming out, blog posts, these new things called blog posts are coming out. And one of the things that people were talking about was hypnotherapy. And, the more I learned about it, the more it was discussed, and, it'd be the 5 things you could do to change your life. And one of them was always hypnotherapy. So these people I was following, these new discussions that people were having, they kept mentioning being able to tap into your own subconscious mind to create change.
Mm-hmm.
Neurolinguistic programming was getting super popular back then as well, but mainly due to the work of Tony Robbins making it popular. And so I started working with that. And I started working with hypnotherapy, and I created great change in my life. And that
Mm-hmm.
led to, and this has been like a slow drip over 40 years to getting to talk to you.
I'm so excited to hear what hypnotherapy is and how it can be done. But I want to backtrack to your teenage years. So
Okay.
I was actually doing a little bit of research because I have a 17 and a 19-year-old, and statistically, the National Institute of Health say that 30% of adults suffer from anxiety, and the World Health Organization says that 1 in 7 teenagers is experiencing some sort of a mental disorder. So I think that the kids nowadays are so much more adept even to have a language to use, a conversation to use. But being born in the 80s, I mean, you probably felt like there was nowhere to turn. Like you mentioned that you had to use the yellow pages, and, talk therapy was your only option at the point. There wasn't even a readily available pharmaceutical for you to take. So, um, and again, I want to talk to you about so many things because I'm so excited to talk to you about. But one of the things that really intrigued me about your work, it's called ACE Any Test. So this is like
Oh,
a
yeah.
program that you've developed for people, kids, teenagers, adults who are dealing with either test taking anxiety or audition anxiety, any kind of an anxiety that deals with like being interviewed or public speaking. And again, I have so many questions for you, but would you take a moment to specifically talk about perhaps like the younger generation, the test taking anxiety, and this specific program?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, the younger generation, I don't actually understand how they're doing it, how they're getting through life. Social media is just this constant barrage of negativity and soul sucking insults. And back when I was going to high school, you got bullied from 9 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. Monday through Friday, and you got holidays off and summer vacation off from that, you know, and weekends off. And but now it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week from anonymous people who
Yeah,
then all these other people you don't know chime in as well. And
yeah,
so I don't know. It's such an extraordinary hostile environment, it seems like, to be a teenager right now. And
absolutely.
and in and of itself, I don't have any answers to that in terms of how do you fix that? How do you make that go away? Because I don't. There's so many, of course, positive things that can come through being able to connect to people like
Mm-hmm.
that. But it's also, there's a certain, ugliness that comes from that, and the pressure and the tension that that brings.
Yeah.
In terms of also being able to have to show off all the time on how awesome your life is. And, back in the day, you could just have quiet time, and you just
You
that
can
was just
have,
the way it was. Well, now it's just,
yeah,
you don't have access to your friends 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
yeah,
You
like, yeah,
had to
you and
be on
I
your own at
had,
times.
yeah, we had like anonymity and we did have that escape when we went home from school, people couldn't find us, we
Yeah.
were not accessible. And now I absolutely hate Snapchat that kids are like showing their location and then people are getting into fights. Like I saw that you were with, this friend and I wasn't invited. And it's huge. It's big. It's like, yeah, that social pressure. And sometimes that inability to have a one-on-one human to human interaction because we're so used to the screens. Ironically, you and I
Yeah.
are in a
Well, yeah.
screen
Well,
situation.
this is the great thing about it. You know, having a wonderful conversation like this. The
Hmm.
technology is extraordinary that an expert in the field of the brain in Europe could have a consultation during surgery with somebody in, you know, Houston or New York or Seattle or something. So that kind of thing is extraordinary. Having this be able to have this conversation is extraordinary. I've worked with people just in terms of this work, therapeutic hypnosis. I worked with a professional basketball player in Iceland. He's in the European League, and he got traded to France now. And so now I work with him in Champagne, France. But
Cool.
with him, he was in Iceland. I worked with somebody. They were in Tahiti. They were an American on vacation, but they wanted some help, and they happened to be in Tahiti. I work with people who've been in Costa Rica and Puerto Rico, and I'm just trying to think of all the kind of oddball places, and Bulgaria, and uh,
Wow.
and so and Switzerland, and so it's extraordinary what this can do. But it's also, again, there's a certain ugliness out in the world, and it can take it over.
Hmm.
And the bickering and the fight, and they, I think, of course, use that as that's a whole different conversation. I think they use that on purpose, for the divide and conquer. And so seemingly there is no peace anymore.
Hmm.
The addictive nature of just being on your phone and of social media, which of course we didn't have. We had our three television stations back in the 80s and 70s and 60s,
Right.
and the five radio stations, and that was it.
Hmm.
And so in and of itself, as I head towards being 60 years old, I don't know this world and how a teenager gets through this, other than
Yeah.
maybe finding tools, whether it's the more of the personal development, self growth, hypnotherapeutic world of just insulating yourself. from that negativity somehow, maybe
Mhm.
using it for some positive gain. But yeah, my wife and I, we went on a double date with some friends a little while ago, a little wine bar thing. And we had it was a square table and we had the four of us and kind of right next to us. And a little bit later, a group of 20-year-olds came in and we're sitting there chatting. We hadn't seen these friends for a bit. So we're all catching up. And this other group of, 20-year-olds came in, obviously all over 21, but 22, 23, something like that. They're all on their
Mm.
phones doing this the entire time, sitting at a square table, facing each other, just like doing this, occasionally going like, and then just looking at their phones the entire time, not engaging
Yeah.
each other, even though they're sitting right there next to each other.
Yeah.
And I don't understand that. And I don't,
I
I,
don't
if
either.
somebody came to me because what this work is about is is the healing you're looking for. So
Mhm.
in terms of being a hypnotherapist, I don't diagnose anybody, I don't analyze anybody, I don't prescribe for anybody. You come to me and tell me what the problem is, and we'll use some tools and techniques to create change and create new patterns in your life that you want to create. This isn't mind control, it's not brainwashing. It gives you back control because a lot of people who come to this work are already out of control. They're living with extraordinary anxiety or stress or anger. Maybe they don't even know why. It's all within the unconscious, so they're already out of control. So this gives you back control. In terms of the original question, back in the 80s, yeah, you didn't have much, and so it was just one of those things I struggled with and lived with and just hid, I guess, to a certain extent.
Mhm.
Tears of the clown kind of thing. And it was
Yeah.
really going off to university in UC Santa Cruz that my world started opening up, getting wider, and learning about the world and other ways of being able to interact with the world and how I was feeling. And then, of course, I got big into Tony Robbins. The Awaken the Giant Within got super huge in the early '90s, and
Mhm.
so I saw that there was a different way. But in terms of this feeling state, especially around tests,
Mhm.
and you mentioned some statistics before, but in specific, test anxiety is something like 36% of people who take tests have some form of anxiety, whether it's minimal or severe. And we're not
Yeah.
just talking teenagers. Yes, of course, you got kids in junior high, kids in elementary school, but kids in uh, junior high and high school, especially they're taking the SAT, they're trying to get into a really good college. University kids who are, of course, taking tests to pass
Mhm.
the class, but also, the LSATs to get into law school or the MCATs to get into medical school. Like
Mhm.
graduating and having to take the bar exam to become a lawyer. Isn't that some like 10-hour test or something over 2 or 3 days? Let alone,
Yeah.
doing your residency and then taking the test to get your license. Car mechanics, electricians, plumbers, they all need certification or licensing in the state they work in, have to take a test. A good friend of mine is an auto mechanic, and he every 5 years or something, he has to take the state test
Hmm.
to get licensed as a car mechanic.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
even older in age, maybe somebody retires and gets bored. Say, well, maybe I'll become a real estate agent. Part-time real estate. Now they have to study and take some sort of, real estate licensing exam at 60 years old, 65 years old, and they haven't taken
Yeah.
it in 40 years or something. You know, so it's not just that it's a high school student. And it's not even just, oh, they didn't study enough, and so now they're really
Mhm.
nervous about the test. There's something else happening, and what's fascinating about it is not that tests are an innate fear. We seem to have some sort of innate fear around rattlesnakes and spiders and things like this, from
Mhm.
and tigers and things, even as babies and children. But we have to learn to be nervous around tests. And I think, if I may, put my 2 cents into this huge topic, I think it's because in terms of how we're educated, we get punished if we don't do well on a test or that report that got turned in or something. Because
Mhm.
if you get a C or a D or an F, you're one, of course, your grade's going up. You might even have to repeat the grade level or the class. If you're in university, you don't do on that chemistry class, you're taking the class over again.
Yeah.
That's more money, that's more time. Let alone your parents being mad at you. Now you're grounded. Now your phone's taken away from you. You can't go,
Mhm.
hang out with your friends on Saturday. So there's a certain punishment. It's not a, oh, you don't get these math equations. I didn't explain them the way you needed to hear them,
Yeah.
assuming the person is trying. Of course, that's a whole different
Mhm.
conversation too. But it's not a way of people understanding that you don't get the information. It's a way of just,
Right.
okay, you're now punished. And so
It's
now,
very punitive.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
very
And so there's
punitive.
pain to it.
Very
Yeah. And
Mhm.
so as human beings, we either, you've heard the thing, you either want to move away from pain or move towards pleasure, but the need to move away from pain is much greater. And so instead of the pleasure of getting an A plus, the pain of getting a D or an F is much greater. And so the nerves start happening. And that's unfortunate because that's going to make it worse because people end up not breathing well when they're stressed or anxious, not just with tests, but any sort of anxiety. You start shallow breathing, maybe even, hyper breathing because you want that quick oxygen in the big muscles of your arms to fight or to escape. But this brain of ours takes 20% of the oxygen, 20% of the energy. 3-pound brain of our overall total body weight, 3 pounds, 2% of our body mass takes 20% of the energy, 20% of the oxygen. So if you're not breathing well, you're not giving your brain the nutrients, the fuel it needs for uh, uh, optimal working environment, especially, and that's a problem when you're taking a test and you get that tunnel vision.
Absolutely.
And so it becomes an issue in that the more nervous you are, the more afraid you are, the more anxious you are around it, more than likely the worse you're going to do because now your body's going into that fight or flight and armoring you against this danger, which is not the tiger, is not the big wildfire, it's not the avalanche. It's a math test or a history test or a chemistry test or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And in and of itself is not life threatening. And so you don't need all that blood supply and oxygen going to the big muscles. Your immune system, your digestive system to turn the power down on, so all that energy can
Mhm.
go to the big muscles. You need a deep breath into your abdomen, the bottom of your lungs, so you can start fueling your brain for calm, rational
Mhm.
thinking. But the reason I ended up doing the ACE test program is that I was working with people here and there with test anxiety,
Hmm.
and they were adults; they weren't teenagers. It's rare that I work with a teenager or even a child. It happens here and there, but it's mostly people 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, later in life when they
Oh.
realize, this sucks, and I think I can do something about it. You're in your 20s, maybe even your 30s, you're like, "Yeah, I got life, I'm gonna grab it by the hair, and we're gonna just go and ride. I'm gonna grab the bull by the horns," and all that kind of stuff, and then you get tired. Your nervous system gets exhausted. You realize that there is pain that you never relieved or, released, and and so most of the people I see are a bit older, middle-aged, if not elderly, because they finally realize, "Yeah, this sucks," you know, and I
Like
have some hurt
they've reached
pain.
yeah,
Yeah,
they've reached the end of their rope, maybe.
yeah,
They think like, "Gosh, I just can't push through this anymore," and it's time to look for, like, a different solution,
yeah, yeah,
perhaps.
and
Hmm.
and and I think that's a great way of putting it, Stephanie, because hypnotherapy is never on the top of anyone's list. It's not. It's at the bottom. And that's unfortunate. Because,
Yeah.
people will come who've done years and years and years of talk therapy and are just frustrated with it and don't wanna try anymore. And maybe they hear a podcast or they read a book or they hear some information about hypnotherapy and that's that, "Okay, this is it. This has gotta work."
Yeah.
Oftentimes, they've done years and years of other kind of therapies, EDMR, and not that talk therapy or EDMR and these other things, um, don't work. They can
Mhm.
be very helpful, very useful, and very healing, but oftentimes the core issue is unknown because it's
Mhm.
within that unconscious part of mind. It's still running the show,
Mhm.
armoring you, but you don't know why. So what are you talking about? You're talking about
This
where
is what
a relationship, but it's not the core issue.
Yeah, this is exactly what I wanted to talk to you about. So, like, I'm one of those people who I'm super open to like any kind of modality. I was a critical care nurse and then I kind of jumped over to being a chiropractor. I've done acupuncture, I've done, all kinds of different things, but I've literally never met a hypnotherapist. I've never come across one. I didn't know it was accessible to me. But I want you to talk a little bit about, so for all of our listeners who are maybe like, what? Isn't that like something that the circus does?
Yeah,
Isn't that something that's like for like a Las Vegas show? But
right.
I mean, I understand the absolute physiology of this, and I want you to talk on that a little bit. So like conscious mind versus subconscious versus unconscious, and what patterns we might be unknowingly bringing into our day to day at 40, 50, 60, that
Yeah.
things that we were never, I don't want to say healed from or addressed, or like you said, that we didn't even really know. Can you talk about that, like difference between like the conscious mind and the unconscious and or subconscious
Yeah.
mind?
And I know there's a lot of unfortunate stigmas against hypnotherapy. I'm sure you get that as a chiropractor too, and acupuncturists do as
I
well.
sure do.
Um, and it's frustrating because this is such as chiropractic is. I do chiropractic all the time. I was in some big falls when I was a kid in a car accident. So till this day, I can feel it, especially sitting on an airplane for a long time or just, you sit on the couch and you're like, or do some workout in the yard and I can feel it. And it
Hmm.
feels so much better when you get that alignment back. Um, as well as, eating right and exercise. You got to do it all. And like you
Yeah.
said, you try these different modalities and you find the coaches and the to help you become your best self. But in
Hmm.
terms of therapeutic hypnosis, it's this idea that you are creating patterns, maybe unknown to you through the hurt and pain you've been through in life, or the what was taught in the home as you're growing up. Maybe you grew up in a very religious home, or a very political home, or maybe a home that was you were bullied in. Maybe a
Mm-hmm.
very loving home. But these are all ways where you have been taught on an unconscious level how to see the world and see yourself. You have beliefs about yourself that you were taught when you were a little kid. Now, it may be fair or unfair, but you are the one who's in charge of holding on to those files in a filing cabinet. And it's unfortunate that hypnotherapy has such misconceptions about it due to TV and movies and even the Las Vegas shows, because it's not mind control. You can't make anybody do anything they don't want to do. That's why
Mm-hmm.
smoking cessation, one of the things hypnotherapy is very famous for, is not 100% guarantee, because if you don't want to quit smoking, you're not going to quit smoking. I just can't go into Las Vegas bars and Las Vegas casinos, one of the few places you can still smoke indoors. I can't go there and just make people quit smoking because I want everybody to be healthier. I
Yeah.
can't go into prisons and hypnotize everybody to be law-abiding citizens. I can't, I'd hypnotize to get myself into the United Nations and hypnotize everybody to create world peace. And then I'd be that guy, and they would, make my birthday international holiday and erect statues and sing songs to me. But I, I can't do that because
Yeah.
you can't make people do things they don't want to do. And so and that's even goes towards those shows in Las Vegas. People are up on stage and are dancing like Michael Jackson and singing like Elvis Presley and barking like dogs and quacking like ducks for the entertainment of this crowd. Every single person up on that stage volunteered to be up there. They want to be part of the show. They're excited to be up there. They think it's funny. They want a funny video to put up on Instagram or TikTok or something. They want to be funny in front of their friends. And they all have a big smile at the end of the show because they had a great time. I also watch those shows. You can find them on YouTube. The hypnotist, the entertainer person will come out and they'll pick about 10, 12 people because they know about 2 or 3 are going to be excused from the stage because they can't do it. They want to do it, but they get up on stage and now they're being stared at under these big lights by 100 people, 200 people, 500 people. And they get nervous. Now they have stage fright because they didn't think it through. Isn't public speaking one of the biggest fears? Even people are more afraid of public speaking than death. So imagine
Wow.
being the entertainment at a show where you're about to do really silly things. Now some people are like into that because they think it's funny, you
Hmm.
know.
Yeah.
But and who's that hypnotist picking? Are they picking the introvert in the back of the room who's sinking down on their chair, hiding in the shadows? Or are they picking the extrovert, the exhibitionist at the front who got there early, who's jumping up and down saying, pick me, pick me. Of those two people, one's going to do a better show, you know?
Yes.
So even those shows, um, there's a certain aspect where it's just that the people want to do that,
Mhm.
you know? And so this is the work. If you want to do hypnotherapy, you want to go into hypnosis, you can do that. Now, people listening to me say, well, I tried hypnosis and it didn't work. And so I can't be hypnotized. And there's these studies from universities that say only, 20% of the people or 10% of the people can't be hypnotized. That's not true. They couldn't be hypnotized in your test, in your study, because they didn't want to. Uh, Everybody can do this work if you're willing and trusting. Now, the situation where somebody said, no, I couldn't be hypnotized. Well, then you didn't feel comfortable in that situation. And then you didn't let yourself lose control. You took control, which proves my point. Everybody can do this because it's just brainwave state. The state of hypnosis is just the alpha brainwave state. And that's literally just how fast your brain is processing information. So if you've ever been bored at work, bored at a meeting at work, and you start staring out the window, thinking about something else, thinking about the weekend, or you got family coming over, you got to hang out with your friends, or you got this big report due on Friday or something, and your mind drifts off, you just moved into hypnosis. In a big room with a
Interesting.
bunch of people under fluorescent lights, you put yourself into hypnosis. Remember high school. There was a class in high school you didn't like or bored you, and you just, start staring out the window. You didn't hear the teacher anymore. But you went into that daydreamy state, driving somewhere, maybe driving home, and there's like
Mm.
a minute or two where you just kinda drift off and start thinking about something else. You don't remember the last 5 blocks, and you're in your driveway or your parking spot or something. Eh, you've just put yourself into hypnosis because you moved into the alpha brainwave state, and literally the biology of it is like right now, Stephanie, you and I are probably in the, beta brainwave state, and we're firing about 18, 20 cycles per second in this present moment, focused, having this conversation, having a discussion. And let's say I'm back in high school math class and it's going to be on the final, so I better do well. And I'm taking notes. I'm trying to figure this out. But man, math is so boring for me. And I just kind of start staring out the window. And I move from the beta brainwave state down to the alpha brain. Everybody's still talking. The teacher's still explaining, writing the equations on the chalkboard, the whiteboard or whatever. But I'm not paying attention anymore. I don't even hear that. I'm thinking about, the vacation, summer vacation coming up. I'm thinking about the trip my family and I took, a couple years ago. I'm thinking about hanging out with my friends over the weekend. I've moved into the alpha brainwave state. I've moved from firing at 18 cycles per second to 12 cycles per second. Just literally how fast my brain cells are communicating to each other. Just a natural state. We move in and out of all day long. And then I'm kind of moving into the theta brainwave state. I'm not really asleep, but I'm not really awake either. I've altered my state of consciousness, not through
Hmm.
drugs, not through meditation, but by being bored in high school math class, being bored at the meeting work, or being bored driving home or something. I know, of course, you're not doing this when you're driving, but you're bored in high school math class. I start falling asleep. I'm not really asleep yet, not really awake. Now I'm firing about 6 cycles per second. The teacher sees me, says, "Hey, Craig, why don't you come up here and do the problem on the board?" Up and I look around, everybody's staring at me. Now I'm embarrassed and I'm humiliated. And I was like, now I got to do the problem. I don't know how to do a problem. That doesn't look familiar to me. I don't know how to do that. And now I'm trying to figure out how to get myself out of this. Now I'm firing about 30 cycles per second because now I'm in the stress response. I just altered my state of consciousness 3 or 4 times in high school math class.
Mm.
You can do this. You do this every day. All we do is do it on purpose. In a hypnotist show, they just do it on purpose for the sake of entertainment. And so if you can see these things happening and you've been programmed over your life to feel a certain way about certain things, maybe about being anxious about tests. You weren't born being anxious about tests, but somehow you learned that. So probably through experience or being taught in school or through family or through religion, certain beliefs you have about yourself or others. You did that. Yeah, maybe you're taught as a little kid and maybe the abuse, of course, wasn't your fault or the trauma, but that makes you feel about yourself, the worthiness or the self-esteem or how to protect yourself. Maybe it became very safe to be quiet and to hide. And now those beliefs and those behaviors and those patterns move into your 20s and 30s and 40s, and they don't really work well in your
Mhm.
30s and 40s. They worked well as a kid and kept you safe. Maybe the best thing you could have done as a kid, but they don't work anymore. But the instructions haven't changed. So why would anything change until you change the instructions? And that's the extraordinary thing of this work. You don't have to look outside of yourself because that subconscious part of mind, that unconscious part of mind, yes, it's running your digestive system. It's running your immune system. It takes a day-old baby to that of an adult. All things we don't have to think about. Beats your heart, grows your hair, grows your fingernails. All these things we don't have to think about. It holds on to habits like tying your shoes and walking down the street and riding a bicycle and zipping up your jacket. Again, all things you don't have to think about. But it's the main job, the subconscious mind, is to keep you safe and protected. And it's doing so by collecting the events, situations, and circumstances in your past, good and bad and the ugly. And it has this filing cabinet in the top drawer. The most important things are the things that were traumatic. And it wants to prevent those from ever happening again. And so it keeps on high alert for those traumatic experiences that maybe happened 50 years ago. And this filing cabinet, as you go through your day, what you see, hear, taste, touch, and smell, the five senses, all this information is coming through this filing cabinet, being filtered through the filing cabinet. If any of those files gets registered or triggered, the alarms go off. Something
Mm.
just in your day looks like maybe something that seems familiar from the past, maybe something traumatic that happened a long, long, long time ago. The alarm system goes off. Now, if somebody pulls the fire alarm in the building, the sirens go off, the strobe lights go off, warning everybody that there's danger. Well, we also have a warning system, but it's feeling states,
Hmm.
feeling the anxiety of overwhelm, of anger, of fear, warning us that there's danger somewhere in our environment and wants to get
Mhm.
our attention. And so we can protect ourselves. The big problem is the subconscious mind, or the mind, I guess, let's just say mind, can't tell the difference between what's real and what's imagined. And this is most noticeable when somebody's having a nightmare. If you ever had this experience, or people listening have had this experience of just having this crazy nightmare, maybe it's very realistic, like a
Mhm.
veteran having a PTSD dream about the war, even though their war was 30 years ago and they're safe and sound in bed. Or it could be super ridiculous, like a cheeseburger's chasing down the street, throwing coconuts at your head. It's dumb. It's never going to happen. But your subconscious mind can't tell whether that's real or imagined. And its main job is to keep you safe and protected. So it has this shoot first, ask questions later safety protocol, and it will uh, armor you with the stress response. Your brain, even in deep sleep, being chased by a cheeseburger, throwing coconuts at your head, will start creating adrenaline, cortisol, dump it into your bloodstream. Your heart starts racing to get the big muscles of your arms to fight, big muscles of your legs to escape, turning down the power of your immune system, your digestive system to get that energy to the big muscles. You start breathing shallowly to get that oxygen quickly to you start to sweat to cool down your body. Maybe there's so much cortisol in your brain that you wake up with a scream, looking for the danger. Your mind wants you consciously aware, looking for that cheeseburger that's chasing you, that's about to attack you. It can't tell the difference between what's real and what's imagined, but it wants to keep you safe and protected. And so that's the subconscious mind. Yes, it's running your immune system, your digestive system, all those things. Um, you know, taking care of those habits that we have to get us through life. But its main job is safety, protection, and it'll emotionalize those things to get your attention. That's subconscious mind. Conscious mind is the logical mind, the analytical mind, the mind that creates your goals and the plans to achieve those goals and the willpower to go after those goals. But what neuroscience tells us is that conscious mind only makes up 5% of mind. Subconscious mind makes up 95% of mind. So when there's conflict between the logical mind and the emotional mind wins every time. That's why none of this has to make any sense. And that's why sometimes things like talk therapy and EDMR, when you're logically trying to analyze a situation and come up with a conclusion or a solution or a resolution, doesn't work because it's not a logical solution that you need.
Hmm.
It's the subconscious mind needs to resolve or to heal some aspect, and it can't tell the difference between what's real and what's imagined. And the other aspect of this is that memories will also be manipulated over time. Doesn't mean they're
Hmm.
fake or false, but you're adding
Interesting.
on to a memory every time you think about it. So if like I was to think about, boy, growing up in high school, I was depressed all the time. I've added on to that memory all the issues I'm dealing with in life right now.
Hmm.
And so memories can be changed and manipulated, which is to
Wow.
our benefit.
Hmm.
Because if you can change and manipulate them, well, then let's do that. It's not to create false memory or create it, but
Yeah.
let's unplug the emotional component from them and create resolution and healing around it. It's your subconscious mind. And you're the one who put those files into filing cabinets. Again, it's not to say it was your fault. It's not to say it should have happened. It wasn't fair. It shouldn't have happened. Kids
Mm-hmm.
going through traumatic events in their life or abuse, that should not happen. But how you protect yourself and how you think about yourself, the beliefs you have about life and yourself, you created those and put those in those filing cabinets, which becomes very empowering because if you're the one who did that, then you're the one who can change it.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is what becomes empowering because if that's what you were able to do as a child, even imagine what you can do as an adult with all the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding you have about life and yourself. And that's
Hmm.
where it becomes really empowering to work with people in their 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s. It's like now you can do this work because you have the understanding around it. It still hurts and
Mm-hmm.
there's still patterns in your life. And I've worked with people in their 70s who say, I just don't, I'm just not worthy.
Hmm.
People who feel they have no worth, who have no value for some 65 years. And we do
Wow.
this deep healing work around it. And it's not to say everything's simple and easy and only takes a handful of sessions, but sometimes it's simple and easy, only takes a handful of sessions because you know what the problem is and you know what to do about it. This isn't going fishing for something as we use 5% conscious mind to try to logically analyze what happened. It may be that you don't remember what happened or how you have stored it in that filing cabinet, but your subconscious mind absolutely does. And this is the thing with people who struggle with chronic anxiety or anger or some other kind of more intense emotion is I'm going to guess you're not anxious and angry all the time. It may
Mm-hmm.
seem like it. But I'm going to guess you're not angry and anxious all the time. There are times maybe watching just TV, maybe going to sleep at night, maybe reading a good book out on the porch or something, talking to a friend on the phone or out to lunch or something, or walking out in nature or something. There are times when you are not that anxious and angry. So your subconscious mind knows when to turn it on and turn it off. You may not
Interesting.
be really aware of it, but your subconscious mind knows when to turn on, turn off. It's not an easy or efficient way to run the brain, the mind, and the body to be in the stress response, to have that fight or flight response. So it knows when to do it. Maybe using faulty instructions and faulty information, but it knows when to do it. And so you, you just may be out of your control. So let's give you back control. And that's the kind of misnomer about this that I started off, 2 hours ago when I started answering your one question, um, is that this doesn't take away control. It gives you back that control. Because a lot of times we're running on autopilot and reacting to life, and our nervous system is exhausted, and it's like the alarm system is broken.
Mm-hmm.
And in and of itself, we don't want to get rid of fear and anxiety. That's what keeps you from walking down the dark alley at midnight. You know, because it's a shortcut home or it keeps you from peering over the Grand Canyon, too far. So it keeps you from walking out in Alaska in a beautiful hike and petting the grizzly bear. You know, um, you don't want to get rid of that because you want that sense of being able to be safe. But it doesn't have to run your life. It doesn't have to be controlling your life by constantly screaming that siren at you. But instead of loud sirens, it's a loud anxiety. So this work is about changing those patterns, changing those instructions that may got put unconsciously through a traumatic event by a child into that filing cabinet. And so as an adult, change it. You know?
It's so intriguing to me, and I'm sure that like this is a question that's going to open up a whole can of worms as well, but just correct me if I'm hearing things. So someone who comes to you, maybe they just don't feel, like you said, worthy, or they know that they self-sabotage, or they know that they have anxiety or irritability. Um are you saying that they don't really need to know, they don't need to know even what the trauma is. They don't really need to even like name it, but they're able to go through this process and I don't want to say change the memory, but change the trigger or change
Yeah.
Like they're changing what is in the file cabinet so that the trigger doesn't seem triggering anymore.
Yeah.
Would
Yeah.
would that be accurate?
That's an extraordinarily great insight, an extraordinarily great question. Yes, that's pretty much exactly it. Um, we don't want to go looking for memories,
Mm.
um, because if the instruction is, because I've had people call me up and, I'll do a consultation call with people. I'll do them all day long. Love talking with people and, see if this is a right match and a right fit and the right way to go about the healing work they're looking for. And they'll say, well, I think something happened when I was a kid. I want to find out what it is and get those memories and things like, absolutely not. I will not do that because there may not be memories back in childhood. But if the instruction into the subconscious mind is find me a memory that was traumatic, it'll find a memory that was traumatic. It may make it up. Mind can't tell the difference between what's real and what's imagined. If the instruction into this computer of the mind is to find a traumatic memory, that's the whole thing in the 80s and 90s of the false memory syndrome that was happening.
Oh,
Is people were investigators and forensic investigations and hypnotherapists were asking people leading questions and finding these, false memories eventually coming out as false memory. People were going to prison
wow.
um, off of false memories because of the
Mm.
way the questions were being asked. And so I don't go searching for false or not false memories, but we're searching for memories. We start with the feeling state because a feeling state in the body of anxiety or anger or fear or procrastination of holding back from, even though it's going to help the person in their career or their life or their health.
Mm.
Uh, but there's some sort of fear holding back because it's safer to stay where you are than to try to create change, even good change. That's a construct in the subconscious mind for some reason. And it's creating a feeling of maybe fear or hesitancy or, overwhelm or frustration or whatever the feeling state is. Well, a feeling state can only be created by brain chemistry. Famous hormones about stress are adrenaline and cortisol. The happy ones are oxytocin, serotonin, and dopamine. But the brain also creates other hormones, as also creates neural peptides, these molecules the brain will create and get dumped into the bloodstream. Hundreds of millions of these. Like, for an example, say if somebody gets a phone call at work and now they got to work all weekend, they got to work Friday night because somebody didn't turn the report in, and now everything, the numbers are messed up. And now they're angry because I had plans and I just hate this person is always not doing their work. Well, going from peaceful and calm to being angry created adrenaline, cortisol, the hormones, as well as these neuropeptides, little molecules of anger that are looking for cells in the body to give that message of anger. And so these emotions can, when you practice them, you get better and better at creating them. And so this chemistry, this stew of chemicals that gets brewed in your brain, um, is is teaching your body a certain outcome, and you're allowed to change that, and create healing around that. So we start with the feeling state. The feeling state in the body of anxiety, of anger, is connected to the brain changing the chemistry. The only way you change brain chemistry in this manner, what we're talking about right now, is through a thought or a feeling, even unconscious. So the feeling state is connected to a thought or well, not a feeling, but it's connected to a conscious or unconscious thought. So follow the feeling state back to the thought that created the brain chemistry, and that's what you work on. It's not necessary, and it doesn't even have to be a real thing like, oh, everybody hates me. Is that true though? It's the work of Brian Katie. Is that true? You know, and so that's what we work on. It's like, well, when I was high school, everybody hated me. Is that true? Are we going to go now spend weeks finding memories of everybody hating you in high school, or should we just deal with the thought?
Hmm.
Real or imagined. Let's just deal with it. Deal with that file. Does the file need to be shredded? Does it need to be burned? Does it just need to be sent from the red folder in the top drawer, the filing cabinet, down to a green folder in the bottom? What needs to happen to this file? Does it need to be crumpled up and thrown behind you into the sun where it's burned up? All this imagery and symbolism, metaphor, which the subconscious mind speaks to us in, symbolism and metaphor and dreams, but we can also speak back to it. So it may be as simple as easy and quick as just take that file, crumple it up, and throw it behind you. Freud was saying that. Carl Jung, Milton Erickson, a subconscious mind speaks to us and we speak back to it in symbolism, metaphor. So let's do that. And that's why this can work. So, and yeah, go find somebody, a friend or something to talk about maybe whether it's real or not. That might be a nice thing and helpful to vent and to talk about it in that manner. But in terms of this work, we don't go searching for that. We start with the
Interesting.
feeling state or what the situation is. Nervousness over giving the speech at the conference next month or whatever it may be, the test or something. And so it's about taking back control of the nervous system. Now, there may be issues around practicing too, because what you practice, you get better at. And you just
Hmm.
don't get to take 1 or 2 martial arts classes and now you have a black belt, for the rest of your life. You don't get to go to 1 or 2 dance classes and now, you're Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers or whoever. That dates me. But, I was trying to quickly think of dancers. I don't know
Well,
who
you
dances.
already told us what year you were in high school, so I didn't confess that right away. So
Yeah. I know, yeah, now my music, I don't even know if I don't think my music's classic rock anymore. Now my music in the '80s is the oldies. Um, and so, this work is extraordinarily fascinating and amazing. It's not to me, you need that team. Just like a baseball player, needs a running coach, a hitting coach, a third base coach, a first base coach, a nutritionalist, a physical therapist, a massage therapist, a chiropractor. All these people, this team to get you to the World Series. So
Mhm.
yes, go to your chiropractor, go to your acupuncturist, go to your hypnotherapist, go to your talk therapist. This team that you need, that you feel works best for you, and become the best person that you want to be. Now, in terms of hypnotherapy, generally I see people 2 or 3 times, average. So
Okay.
yeah, sometimes I see people 7, 8 times. Some people I see 1 or 2 times. Depends on what you want to work on. And I don't, we have a conversation on the phone and I say, oh, well, you seem like an eight session person. I don't know. Like I did one person, I worked with somebody this a few years ago. This is right when everything started going to Zoom, right during COVID. I was working with a cancer support community and doing classes. They opened up an office in my city. And so I thought, oh, I'll do some classes. I'll give back to the community and all that kind of stuff. And I was doing some workshops on anxiety relief and stress and pain management, that kind of stuff. And then COVID happens, and they're the first people to really shut down that I noticed because everybody has compromised immune systems.
Mhm.
And so we all went to Zoom classes. So I had to learn how to do Zoom classes really quickly. And so there would just be a series of 3 or 4 classes over the course of a month or so. And you get 12, 15 people on a class. And I was working, doing a class, and this older woman, I could see she's in her 70s, uh, was in the class. And on the third session, third class, she was a bit early. I was a bit early. Well, of course, I'm running a Zoom class. And we were just chit chatting as one does. And she asked me, oh, does hypnotherapy work with procrastination? I said, well, yeah, that's a mindset issue. You're afraid to move forward with some manner. And so we can find out what's holding you back and find resolution to that and healing around that so you can move forward. You don't have to procrastinate and hide anymore. And so we set up an appointment for the very next day over Zoom. And in 24 hours, by the time she got to that session, she said, well, I know I told you I wanted to work on procrastination. And here's the person I was talking about earlier. She said, but what I really want to work on is why I don't matter in life. Because
Mm.
when the subconscious mind realizes, oh, we're going to do some healing work, we can work on a problem, but why not work on the problem? It's sort of like you have that big long line of dominoes. Don't just knock over the last 2 or we here, start at the beginning and go poking and knock them all down. And so
Yeah.
somebody, well, why don't we just, work on the problem? Well, why don't I feel worthy? Why do I have no value at 70 years old and have no value in life? So we're doing some deep healing work. And one of the things in this is go back to the first time you ever felt that feeling.
Hmm.
And this is where it comes in. It's like, I don't need to know if that memory was real or not. It's
Hmm.
real in the filing cabinet. This is the memory, the issue that is connected to the feeling state that we need resolution around. And it may be that, it may have been kind of manipulated to the point where it's grown in its fear and anxiety. but that's what we need to work on. So let's go back. So I'm not looking for a memory. I'm looking for what has caused this feeling state. There's a subtle difference, but it's a big difference. And so
Absolutely.
go back to the first time you ever felt this feeling. And so, because we want to connect it to the thought that is trying to protect her from this issue.
Mm.
So, 10 down to 1, we're doing some techniques and tools, using some tools. And so we get down to 2 and 1, and where are you? She says, I'm standing up in my crib, and my father's screaming at me because I won't stop crying.
Mm.
And so that, I don't know, what's that? 12 months old, 14 months old, somebody standing up in their
Oh,
crib.
yeah.
And this is a 70-year-old woman whose maybe first memory is being about a year old and being screamed at by her father because she's crying and hysterical. And if she's 70 years old, this has got to be, the late 1950s or so. And maybe men weren't exactly taught how to be nurturing fathers at that point, and or maybe dad's having a bad day or a bad life. Maybe he's just not a nice person. But
Yeah.
maybe mom's not around and the baby won't stop crying. He doesn't know what to do. He's at his wits' end. So in his frustration and his annoyance and his anger, he just screams louder than the baby and tells the baby to shut up. And in
Mm.
that moment, that child needs to justify what's happening. This person is supposed to protect her and love her and take care of her is screaming at her. And to justify, say, well, I guess this means I just don't matter.
Wow.
And she held on to that instruction and that belief
Mm.
that that child put into that filing cabinet unconsciously through a traumatic event for some 70 years
Wow.
until one day she decided, you know what, it's time to release and let this go.
Hmm.
And we did that one session. I never saw her again. I mean, I checked in
Wow.
with her and, over the months and a year or so and just like doing great. Fantastic. So we had done like 3 generalized group classes. So she had a understanding of the work and a grounding and a centering herself in the work and understood how it worked, especially over Zoom. Did one solo session specifically on the issue, never saw her again. And so
That
I don't want to say
wow.
everything's this kind of like simple, easy, dramatic, intense thing, but
Mhm.
sometimes, that's why I tell people, yeah, 3 or 4 sessions because you know what the problem is. And more
Hmm.
importantly, you know what to do about it.
That blows my mind in like so many regards. First of all, like it makes me so sad for this 70-year-old woman that she carried that for her entire life. And you just think about all the decisions that she made
Yeah.
with that subconscious or unconscious thought. Like I don't matter. So maybe it doesn't matter if I marry a man who mistreats me or oh, I'm going to take this job that's below me or I'm going to accept mistreatment or whatever. I'm not a psychologist or nor a hypnotherapist, so I'm not sure, but can you imagine all of the decisions of that 70 years of life that were made with that, like, I hate to say, but hanging over her?
Yeah.
And I'm astounded that one session was so impactful. Yes, she had like those 3 group sessions, but I actually I mean, I'm learning about hypnotherapy through our conversation and I'm surprised that 3 or 4 is the average. I would have thought that this work would be like several years or once a month for 24 months. Like I'm actually really encouraged for our listeners and myself who I'm going to jump on your consultation list. But I that's really cool that it happens so fast. Like
Yeah.
that's super encouraging to me.
Well, and it shows the power of you. It shows the power of your
Mm.
mind. Again, this is like the placebo effect. And the placebo effect isn't magic, it isn't mysticism, it's not fake. It's the mind healing the body. And like a drug company, a pharmaceutical company has to account for that in their research. They know mind will heal the body. And so let's say they're doing a high blood pressure medication. And so they have to have the control group, the group that's going to get the sugar pill, because they may be influencing them unknowingly to heal themselves, maybe through the literature that they send out about this test, what they say on the website, the pamphlet that they have, the waiver that people are saying, what they're saying in the research office, or maybe the way the office is decorated, the way the office smells like a doctor's office. I guess I'm going to get cured here. It may all be influencing them unconsciously to heal themselves. So they have to uh, account for that. So that's why they have that control group. And let's say 30% of the people on the sugar pill lower their blood pressure. Well, then they have the people getting the real blood pressure medication. Let's say 40% get better. Well, they have to actually subtract 30% because maybe they influence them as well to get better through the
Interesting.
literature, the office, and all that stuff. So they have to, well, if 30% on the sugar pill got better, then maybe 30% in the real medication healed themselves. So really only 10% got better, and that's good enough. We'll put it on the market at $80 a pill. But they don't look like, yeah, but more people heal themselves through mind, by being influenced to heal themselves. And so that's what we do, whether it's more of a physical issue, irritable bowel syndrome or overactive bladder, or even physical pain that just doesn't seem to be able to be treated in any sort of way. But we also with emotional issues and, mindset issues and beliefs, patterns and things. It's your mind. Your mind's the one that's holding on to it and even creating it and even making it worse, turning up the volume knob on it all.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're the one who's doing it. And it's not to say it's your fault because there are instructions in there, maybe given or created by a child. So let's change it. And again, I don't want to make it sound so simple and easy, but sometimes it's simple and easy. But, even something as general, or how about this? Something as specific as fear of flying.
Hmm.
Um, I've worked with people, like 6 times to deal with their fear of flying. I worked with somebody 1 time with their fear of flying. Why 1 time? Why 6 times? I don't know. That's just what they needed. And in and of itself, though, while it's pretty specific, fear of flying, but it's like people have different reasons around fear of flying.
Yeah.
And so we have to work with what it is even if it's this, something like as general as anxiety. It's like, of course, people have anxiety for different reasons. So we're going to look at the feeling state and, discover why the mind is creating that warning system that may has gone haywire because of so much practice over the decades.
Yeah.
But you're allowed to do it. You're allowed to turn down the volume knob anytime you want. You don't have to have the stereo blasting at a level 10 all day long.
I love this. Yeah. Craig, it has been absolutely wonderful to talk to you. And I'm so excited for our listeners to have this other option to help them become their best selves. How can we find you? How can we find you online?
Yeah, well, if you've been trying to change something in your life, maybe anxiety, maybe habits, patterns, maybe even sense of purpose in life, and you just haven't been able to shift to the level you're looking for or that you want or you're capable of. There's something maybe deeper happening in the subconscious. This is what we've been talking about for the last hour and 10 minutes or something. And so I'll give you a starting point. You can go to my website. It's craigmeriwether.com. I know Meriwether, I spell it a bit differently. So a great way to remember this is just releasethepast.com, and that'll get you there. And you can download my free ebook, Power Behind Your Beliefs. And I'll help you understand a little bit more even about what we've been talking about this last hour or so. But I'm also happy to, talk with you, do a free consultation call, or if you're ready to set up an appointment, we can do that as well. But we'll look at what's going on and map a path forward and how to shift it. So either craigmeriwether.com, just notice the spelling of Meriwether, no A, only 1 R at the beginning, and or releasethepast.com will get to the same place.
Wonderful, Craig. Thank you so much for being a guest. ReleaseThePast.com with Craig Meriwether. He is a subconscious transformation specialist, clinical hypnotherapist. Craig, thanks for your time today. I really appreciate it.
It was fun talking with you, and we'll do it again.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening. If you've enjoyed this podcast, would you please rate it, review it, like, or subscribe? You can find me on social media at wautierwellness.com, Dr. Stephanie Wautier on Instagram, or Wautier Wellness Chiropractic and Massage on Facebook. And I'm so curious where your next conversation will take you.